back to another episode of the Wet Dreamz Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Gonzalez, and I'm a sex therapist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Hinman. I am also a sex therapist and a licensed professional counselor and also a marriage and family therapist.
Yeah, thanks for listening, coming back. We've been doing the series on our model, our 8-step kind of model thing that we did, and we'll show the PDF will be in the show notes of our 8-step model. But today we're on step 4, talking about defining the problem, and arguably this is probably one of the most important steps in the entire model, is defining the actual problem. And it's not porn. It is, but it isn't.
Right.
Like, I think the assumption is like, okay, porn's the problem. What do you mean no porn? But it's often deeper than that, and there's always a why behind it. And I'm excited to get into this one. This is like the meat of it. All the other ones are important too. Listen to all those episodes for sure, but this one is really important as well. So what do we mean? Why do I say that? I mean, why do we say that like porn is not the problem?
Yeah, it's the way I explain it is to clients, like porn is a symptom of the problem, right? Like, because I've had medical people say to me like if you get a headache, the headache is not the problem, it's a symptom. There's a reason you have a headache. So there's a reason that people have a porn problem, or there's a reason why people have an infidelity problem or whatever, right? Whatever the sexual issue that they're struggling with, that's not really the problem. That's a symptom of a deeper issue. It could be like lack of affirmation, lack of validation, lack of respect. And then you're getting that deficiency need met through some artificial means, like hooking up with women or looking at porn or flirting or, whatever it is that you're doing.
Right. So it's just coming from something else. What's ways that our guys have come up with the why or the problem or whatever? How do you find it? How do you find what the actual problem is? Yeah. Some of our guys,
unfortunately, through time, like through discussing that with them, as they tell their story, as they work through, because one of the previous episodes, one of the previous steps in this model was history, right? And so we take a sexual history with them, and then themes start to emerge that way, like, you didn't feel respected in school. You didn't feel respected at home. You don't feel respected in this relationship. I'm kind of sensing a theme, right? So talk to me about respect. Talk to me about how you get respect. How do you feel respected? And talk to me about times when you didn't feel respected. I mean, if respect is the issue.
Yes.
Right. So it's, you said, how do we figure it out? It's through us as therapists listening to their story and kind of coming up with themes or consistent areas where they felt off or wrong, right? Or all these. And so, then honing in on that, because they generally know, like once I hit on it, they're like, yeah, that's it.
Right. It hits,
but they can't verbalize it before I hit on it. It seems like, right?
Yes.
So,
right.
And then it resonates with them.
Yep.
But then there's been times where I guessed and they're like, no, that's not
right.
I mean, it's not a non-issue, but it's not the issue.
Right. And there's also been times where, and it's a building. I mean, all of this builds on itself, like the history and all the past stuff that's happened. Finding themes builds on finding the why, but also there's times where I'll say something and they'll like, oh, it's about this, and they'll be like, yeah, kind of, but that's not quite it or whatever, and then we go from there, like, okay, well, let's start with that. That's the closest we can get to what it is, but then we kind of continue to build on that in later sessions. Sometimes that happens that way, where it's like you slowly break down the core of it, and then you're like, oh yeah, damn, this is the word respect, or like love, or affirmation or whatever, then it gets to the meat of it. That's
Mhm.
happened often. It's like building on itself.
Right. Right. And then once I feel like typically once we discover really what the core issue is or the problem, then that seems to drive much of the rest of therapy is like, how do you get that need met? Like, how can you get that need met in a positive way, one that doesn't violate your relationship boundaries, right? What are healthy ways? Because it's not a problem that you need, that is what I tell clients, right? It's we need what we need. Like, sure, it's annoying that we get hungry, but we got to eat, right? And so being hungry or needing respect or needing affirmation or validation, that's not the problem. It's how you're getting that need met, right?
Yep, and that's, I believe it's step 7 or something like that. We get to the needs and like, okay, what do you do with those needs? This is really the beginning of formulating. Okay, this is what my history has shown that that's been going on in my life. This is what now I'm identifying, like what I'm missing,
Mm-hmm.
And then you address like, okay, how do you get that in a healthy way? That's kind of, it's almost like our motto is like 3 separate steps, like before, and then you realize what the actual problem is, and then you get that problem solved essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the peak of the mountain of being like, whoa, this is like, you can see your life in 30,000 foot view. Like, dang, I noticed back when when I first got integrated with porn or sex or whatever, this happened, and then now I see this happening throughout my life, and this here, and you realize like, oh man, I'm lacking affirmation, or everything I do is for someone to admire me, or I feel like I'm not enough in all of these areas of my life, not just porn. That was the symptom of it, but I feel like I act that on all these areas of my life, so you get to see that like bird's eye view of like, oh crap, like this is deep, essentially. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, as people progress through therapy, they start to understand more what makes themselves tick, right? Like what they kind of get a better grasp of, oh, this is what I need. Getting guys to ask their partner for what they need is another problem, right? Because I always joke that men don't ask for directions, and so they're to me, asking for what you need is part of the them not asking for what they need is part of the same issue of them not stopping to ask for directions, right?
Right.
And so, like, I should know how to do it myself, or I should be better at this, or whatever. Sure, you should, but you're not.
But
right
you're
now,
not.
right? So,
right.
And that's, I tell people the first time you learn to do anything, you're not good at it, right? Like it's the first time that you drove a car, you weren't good at it. And so you had to take driving lessons, and you had to drive with a licensed driver for a while. And so to me, it's the same thing. You're learning a new skill, and that's okay. But if you know that you need to feel understood or have your opinions listened to, if that's the thing, it's okay to ask for that, because otherwise you're depending on your partner to read your mind, and we suck at reading minds. So
right.
So it's better, rather than waiting for your partner to read your mind and then getting mad because they didn't read it correctly. Why don't you just ask for what you need? And you don't have to be a dick about it. Like you can be nice. It hurt my feelings when you did this. Can you say it this way so that I don't feel bad? Right. It's not, your head's not going to explode if you ask for what you need.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. What do you think are some resistance, or what is resistance that you've seen in this step, in the sense of like finding the why? What makes it hard for our guys to find the why at this time part in like therapy and stuff like that for you? Whatever you noticed.
A couple of things. It's they've never thought about it before. They don't. No, I shouldn't say nobody. I've had a few clients over the 13 years that have like actually thought about why they look at porn or why they're doing whatever. But most people, they just kind of do this behavior instinctually or without thinking about it or planning it out. And so that's the first reason is that because nobody's ever asked them that question before. And so they don't know why until they think about it and figure out the answer why. And so another unfortunate answer to that question is they don't really want to get better.
They do and they don't.
Yes. That's exactly what I was going to say. It sounds bad when I say they don't really want to get better. They not 100% of them wants to get better.
Right.
Like, the way I say it to people is 51% of you wants to get better and 49% of you wants to keep using. Yeah. That's today because you're in here.
Right.
Tomorrow it might be 51% wants to keep using and 49%.
Yes.
So you still want to get better. Yes. It's just the part of you that wants to keep using takes over. Right.
Yep.
And so an easier way to say it, an easier way to hear it for listeners of the, like, why is it hard to figure out what the problem is because people resist change. Systems resist change. Our brain resists change. And so when we figure out what the problem is, then you need to do something to change that. And we live in a society where people do things for us. We're not used to doing things ourselves, the hard work, right? We're used to microwaves cooking our food and whatever. We're used to instant everything. And so once people figure out the problem, it begs the question of what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And then they don't know what to do about it, and so then they don't want to do anything.
Right. Then it's overwhelming or like whatever. Yeah, it's hard, I think, for people to know what the issue is and just sit on that. I don't know if that feels uncomfortable, I also think there's an element of whether it's being a guy, whether it's like the nature of that kind of addiction of keeping it separate. There's this element of like it's siphoned off, so like here's the porn issue and it's in its box, but that doesn't touch anything else. Like, no, that's just porn. That's just what I do over here, but in order to define the problem, in order to see the why, you have to see how it goes across all of those different like areas in your life. And it's not so much siphoned to this part, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of our guys and just guys in general, I know I do it. It's like, there's this problem over here, but it's in a box. It's like over there under my bed or something. Like I don't have to think about that. And that doesn't touch the other problems that I have in my life. That has nothing to do with me watching porn, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the way I explain it to clients is you're just one person. Like every part of your life is connected because it's you, right? So
not be connected,
right? So yes, it has an impact, right? It's the way your boss treats you at work has an impact on your relationship, and your relationship with your partner has an impact on how you think about yourself. It's all connected. You're just one person.
Right.
So every experience is connected. And your thoughts and emotions about those experiences are all connected.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. How else can, one of the parts of the model that we put is like going back to the source. I think that's like one way it's similar to, again, looking back at the history and whatever, but that's one way to kind of start to decode the why, like, especially like, I found often where guys will have an interesting first experience. Like, for example, they went to a prostitute to lose their virginity or something like that. Like a family member, the father made them go to prostitute to lose their virginity. And then it's just always fascinating how much from then on things like mirror that experience, whether that's, even the type of female that they're attracted to was similar to like the prostitute, or whether it's the way they like to do sex was similar to that. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like it mirrors it so much. I think the question is, what are some other ways that people can learn the why? And part of the answer is the source. I guess I'm kind of asking and answering the question. I'm a great interviewer. I'm just asking and answering it, but you know what I mean.
Do your thing. I'll just sit here.
And watch. Just nod your head, nod along.
I do think it's important to go to the source. I think it's because that's a common question for me when I see clients is, they might be telling me about an argument that they had with their partner, right? And, because they come in, I'm always like, well, what's happened since last time I saw you, And so inevitably, we got in this big fight about, the holidays and, blah, blah, blah. And so they'll tell that story of that specific incident that happened 3 days ago. And so then I'll say to them, when is the first time you remember feeling like that? Right? Because we just talked about respect, right? Like the respect may be one of the reasons that somebody looks at porn because they don't feel respected at home. Well, if they got in a fight with their partner, then I'm listening for, did they feel disrespected 3 days ago when they got in this fight with their partner, right? And so then when is the first time that you felt disrespected like that? And then they tell me very clearly, very often, almost all of my clients can say, I was 8 years old. I came home from school. I got, 100% of my spelling test and nobody cared. Right. Nobody, you sucked at social studies, or whatever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that then they feel disrespected.
Yeah.
Or they feel not listened to or invalidated or whatever the word is. And so then that it helps to ask them, what did you do then about it? Because if he was 8, he probably wasn't looking at porn at that point, right? So what did you do? So that was before the out of controlness happened. And so, what did you do then to help yourself feel better in that situation? Oh, well, I just went for a walk with my dog and, played with my dog and petted my dog and blah, blah, blah. Well, do you have a dog now? No, I know. Maybe you need to get a dog, right? Yeah, because if that's helped you feel better and that worked before, right? And so, I've said it before and say it again, that I feel like any addiction or any out of control behavior or any obsessive behavior that you have, it's really a coping mechanism, right? And so you've developed this as a coping mechanism, and the solution, in my opinion, is we need to develop alternative healthy coping mechanisms to replace this unhealthy coping mechanism. Unhealthy because you've gotten caught and it's bothering your relationship or it's bothering your internal moral compass.
Right.
And, so then that's why I'm calling it unhealthy.
Right. It's doing damage to your life in some way that you've deemed as damaging. Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I think that's another thing to point out, like, with going back to the source, for anybody that's listening, like, part of the strategy can be like going back to those moments in your life where you felt like a strong emotional thing happen, or trauma is kind of essentially like, I feel like those are good roadmaps or pointers to be like, okay, this situation happened when I was X years old. Like, how did I feel there? And why was that so important? And why is it so important that I remember that one? You know what I mean? And those are like clues, I think, for guys to be like, okay, well, there's some patterns here in these 3 situations where I got really upset. It all boiled down to respect or affirmation, whatever, it boiled down to a couple of these key themes. Like, oh, damn, that must be important, So it's like going back to the source to go forward, I suppose, or whatever,
Yeah. And then that reminds me of another question that I typically will ask people is, when this happened, so when was the first time that this happened is the question, and so when they can tell me the first time that happened, and like I said a minute ago, one of the things that I said, well, what did you do to make yourself feel better? But also there's things that work to make it better, but often we get some kind of message. So like when I came home from school and nobody cared about my spelling test, we got some kind of message from that. And, teasing that out is important as well.
Yes.
Right. To understand, because the message that you got when you were 8 is the same message you're getting now when you're 32, when your wife didn't listen to what restaurant you wanted to eat at, right? Like it's even though completely different age and in your brain, they're not related at all.
Yes. The
emotions feel the same. And so then your actions to comfort your emotions are going to be the same.
Right.
And so,
and you're even at times giving yourself that message. You're the one telling that message to you sometimes too. You know what I mean? Like double whammy.
Yep. We perpetuate our own abuse, if you want to use that word. We perpetuate our own negative emotions because we tell ourselves, well, so now it's not your parents ignoring you or your siblings ignoring your spelling test. It's you ignoring yourself. It's you ignoring.
No, but I didn't do well in this scenario. I got a promotion, but it wasn't as I didn't get this promotion.
Right.
I didn't finish this task on time, and that kind of sucks. Like, yeah.
Yep. And so now we're perpetuating that negative emotional state because we're telling ourselves those things, right? Like because often people, unfortunately, we incorporate those messages in and we give them space to live in our brain, and then we perpetuate that. And being able to let that go eventually, and that's what therapy helps you to do, it's super freeing. And also, like, I've had lots of clients say to me, I don't even need to look at porn anymore. Like it's not, like they're almost confused.
In the first place.
Right. Like, why did I get so into this? Because I don't even think about it anymore.
Right. Exactly.
It's because they don't need to. Like they've solved the need. Right. So
definitely. Yeah. So then, and I'm, we're at a limited amount of time. I'm not saying it's an easy thing. Just find the why. Like, cool, you're good. You found the why. And I think then it leads into starting to disassemble that porn as a coping skill, which then we're going to talk about that in our next step. If you see our model, the next step is disassembling. But I think there's an initial conflict of, okay, I found the why, and I'm using porn to do this why. Like, then you're starting to think like, okay, well, what can I do differently, or how do I even get that? Like, you have to come to grips that you're using porn to get that need or that why, and now you have to like choose. Okay, I got to do something different. Like, it's the initial like change. I don't know, the model of change or whatever. There's a contemplation. You're thinking like, okay, there's something I need to change. So what is the first kind of confrontation that our guys have when they figure out the why?
There's a big struggle with getting them to choose to do something different because they've done the same thing, like sticking with I don't know why I'm picking on 32-year-olds, but
I'm a little older than that. It's not me.
Often our guys will have started the porn at like 12, 13, 14, and now they're 32, right? So you're using the same thing that you used 18 years ago to solve this problem now, right?
Yeah.
And so let's try something different.
Right.
Let's because you're not 14 anymore. Let's choose a grown-up coping mechanism rather than a teenage. But it's hard. Like asking people. I often say to my clients, "You're asking me to rewire your brain. Like, we're literally creating new neural pathways in your brain, and that's hard. This is a difficult process." Because we're trying to overwrite. In our example, it's 18 years of programming, right? So from 14 to 32, like thank you.
Good job.
You're overwriting 18 years of negative programming, right? And so there are alternatives that you can choose. There are alternatives that will eventually work just as well, if not better, because it's not damaging your relationship, right? There's alternative choices that you can make that is going to give you the same feeling of respect or validation, but without the negative impact on your relationship and the negative impact on yourself. Because every time you do something that you don't want to do, i.e. look at porn, you're damaging your own relationship with yourself too. And we kind of ignore that.
Right.
Like if people come in our door,
yes,
they're like, I'm here because my girlfriend made me come, or my wife made me come, right? And so, because she's going to break up with me if I don't come here. But what about you? You can't break up with yourself, right?
You're hurting yourself.
Yeah, yes. Every time you act out, you do something that you've told yourself you're not going to do anymore. You're hurting yourself. Yep. And so, I think a lot of it is, I say to my clients, falling out of love with porn, right? We poke holes in porn as a coping mechanism. We start pointing out the lies that porn tells you. Like, these people don't care about you. The people you're looking at in porn, they don't care about you. They don't even know you exist, right? And if they do, like if you're doing OnlyFans or something like that, they only care about your money.
Like 100 other people that are subscribed, whatever.
Yeah. They don't. They're going to tell you whatever it takes for you to give them money, but they don't care. They don't care about you. And so it's not, you're not getting respect. You're not getting validation. You're tricking your brain into thinking you're getting those things, but they don't. These people do not respect you.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by like disassembling porn as a coping mechanism. But then at the same time, we're building other coping mechanisms like exercise or music, or it's really up to the client.
Yeah.
Like I try not to suggest coping mechanisms, because you have to figure out what works for you. But figuring that out is part of our, helping you figure that out is part of our job. And then practicing that, it's not going to work as well as 18 years of habitually looking at porn. That's again, the way I word it to clients is, when you try something the first time, it's not going to work as well as something that you've done over and over again forever. Like if you're playing the violin, like the first time you play the violin, it's probably different than 18 years later of daily practicing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so it's like it's a pretty intense step, I think, because they're having to confront the fact that they've been doing something for 18 years that's not working, or like, they've been desiring something else. They've been hurting themselves for 18 years or whatever. Like, it's a big step to move from, it's like the tipping point to move from like, this is a problem to this is a problem. I don't know if that sounds weird, but you know what I mean? Like, this is just an issue versus this is like core to me, like what this is like at the depth of like me as a person for them. That not that it's the only thing that defines you, but this has been there and has taken away from you being the best person you can be for 20 years, for whatever, it's not just a stubbed your toe thing. It's like, whoa, this is like, has been in everything that you've done since eight years or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a huge like step in like, okay, damn, that's like deep, and then the next step is like, okay, then what do I do with that? That'll be our next step in the model. But this is, sitting in that and being like, man, I do have trauma. I do have like, this is something I desire, and I've never really achieved, never really felt fully whatever that need is, respected, affirmed, loved, whatever, you may have never felt that. Like, it's big, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, and clients tend not to put those things together. They may know that they want the desire to feel respected. But they're not putting that with, this is why I look at porn. And they're not putting those two things together in that this is affecting or ruining my life, right? Like, it's, men are experts at compartmentalizing, right? So, my life is going pretty well. I have this little problem over here.
Right.
But
other than that,
every day, but other than that, I'm doing good. No, this problem has tendrils kind of throughout your life, right? It impacts, your sexual relationship with your partner. It impacts your relationship with yourself in that how I feel about myself, or do I respect myself, right? It just has these, and those are 2 examples, but there's I could list probably 10 more that there. So this problem has kind of fingers or tendrils throughout your life, and it touches everything, right? And then even like after you look at porn and masturbate, now you're going to feel guilty, and you're going to tell you, like, I suck. I told myself I was going to do this. You get mad at yourself. That has impacts as well, right? And so this really affects a lot of stuff. That's a term that I've used with my clients is you've pornographized your life, right? So when you have a PhD, you can make up words.
Yep, there we go.
And so, what I mean by that is the impact that porn has had on your life, you've spread that to other relationships and other interactions with people, and you've made them like actors in pornography as well.
Yeah.
Right? That they're here to serve you, and that their feelings are not important. It's your feelings. It has impacts that are huge and ripple effects throughout your life. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And even simply, one example that, even a baby example of like, porn and masturbation doing this consistently tends to make guys tired, so even the example of you maybe not being as present with your family because you're more tired, like that's a tiny impact of it, but then do that times 100 or whatever, times 20 things that you're being affected by porn, then you can start to see, or like pulling back the current of like, oh damn, it's here, when I just thought it was over in this little space,
Right. Yeah, it's
crazy.
Compartmentalization is great, but not when it impacts your mental health and you think that this is not, it's an isolated problem.
Right, for sure.
Because it's not.
It's not at all. Yeah. So that's a big one. Again, I think we'll continue to build off that of like, okay, now once guys have made the decision, like, oh shoot, okay, this is big, then you have to start, what do you do with that? I think it's the next step in this process, but I think like, again, sitting in, finding the themes, I think is one of the big things I think guys can do in this step of like, okay, where do I see this theme throughout my experiences or throughout times that I've felt emotional or negative emotions or whatever. That's because I feel like guys, it's hard sometimes to get that button, or what's the why, it's hard. And I think that goes for anything probably when you're trying to figure out why, but that's a tough one. So what kind of final, what's something that a guy can take to be like, okay, I want to figure out my why, like, we might have said it already, but just as a wrap up, what would you leave with some like our guys?
Like, I think going back to before you used porn, or I keep referring to porn, but it could be flirting, it could be talking to people, it could be hookup apps, it could be whatever.
Yes.
Whatever your particular manifestation of this problem is. Going back to before that existed, what strong feelings have you experienced? How did you cope with those experiences? And then we stop doing those healthy coping mechanisms and we start doing an unhealthy coping mechanism. So just kind of, it requires introspection, right? Like I tell clients, like when you're sitting in a stoplight, you have 30 seconds, think about this, and then when the light turns green, stop thinking about it.
Right.
But or when you're standing in line at Starbucks or something, right? Like think about this, like, I wonder why, but I tell people, be gentle with yourself. Like, don't be like, why do you do this? Yeah. Right. You have to be like, I wonder why this happens. Yes. Right. Why do I keep, what is it that I'm really wanting? That's another struggle that clients have, is because they think they're doing it because they're horny. Yeah. But I'm like, no one needs to masturbate 3 times a day.
Right.
Like
right.
If you're doing it, if you're masturbating that often, you're doing that to placate your emotions. You're doing that to distance yourself from negative emotions. There's other reasons that you're doing that, right? And so figuring out what is it that I'm really after, because what you think you're after, sex, is not what you're really after.
Right.
You're after the emotional connection, pretending that these people care about you, that you're looking at, so to answer your question, to figure out the why, like you have to ask yourself questions and you have to listen to the answer. And so, but it's going to be something you've never thought about before. It's going to be, you've never answered this question before. And so when I do it in session with clients, I'm like, take your time and think about it, right? It'll come to you.
You think it's one thing and then you come to find out like it's not quite that, it's something else. You know what I mean? Like that's the process. It's just, I think it's important, like you said, being gentle with yourself and being like a detective. Like why did I do that? Like, but why at this time and not this time, or why with this person and not this person, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, what's that detective? Watson is the side. Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
Gosh, random. You got to be Sherlock Holmes. Like, what? Look at the clues. Like, what's going on here? Anyways.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's doable. Like, it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's doable.
Yeah, definitely. Sweet. Yeah. Well, that wraps this episode up. Thanks for listening. Obviously, again, we'll have the PDF in the show notes if you're interested in looking at the model. Follow us on all the socials, Wet Dreamz with a Z podcast at all socials. Minus TikTok, but that's side note. But yeah, we appreciate you guys listening, and let us know what you think.
Thanks for joining us.
The Wet Dreamz Podcast and any content posted is intended for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining a medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.